Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please subscribe and share so you will never miss an episode. Android users can find us and subscribe on your Play Music app. Apple users can find us and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Stitcher. You can follow us on Spreaker. And you can find the podcasts on jimmyhinton.org or findingahealingplace.com. Please rate our show, subscribe, and share so that we can spread the word. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to this week's podcast, here with Jimmy Hinton.
And Jimmy's mom, Clara.
It's good to be back. And, well, we can share this now because it's public information. Last week when we recorded, it was not. But we were in the middle of a family crisis when we recorded last week. And we decided to record anyway because you people are important to us. And this podcast is important to us. But we had family members who were over in Haiti. My brother Tim, who is a medical doctor, led a team of 16 people to Haiti the same day that I was leading a group of 10 people from Ecuador back home to the United States.
And I'm the old mother who sits at home biting on her fingernails as my kids fly all over the world here.
Yeah. So we're quite busy, and, I talked about us flying all over the place last week, and we do. We just bounce all over the world, and we've just always been travelers. So, anyway, when they were over there in Haiti, it was actually last Tuesday, they had a really bad car accident. And it was a rollover, and one person got ejected, and my brother was severely injured. My brother-in-law was also pretty badly injured. And then the other guy, Jeremy, who was ejected, he had severe injuries, severe head trauma. And, of course, over in Haiti, they don't have real good medical care. And so my brother, as injured as he was, had to help keep Jeremy alive and stable.
Let me interject here. If people want to look online and hear Tim's talk about this, it might be good. And maybe at the end, Jimmy, you can post a link or whatever. But when we hear a car accident, we're thinking of a nice car.
Where people are seatbelted in.
Right. And this isn't at all. It was called a tap-tap, and where you just pile passengers in with a Haitian driver. The road isn't a road like we drive here that we're accustomed to. Totally different, a steep, winding road. And the circumstances, when we say they don't have great medical help, let's put it this way. They don't have ambulances that come flying to your rescue. There's no whistles that blow. They were stranded for close to 2 hours in the heat, bleeding severely, gashes all over, not knowing if a person was truly going to live through the next couple minutes. So it was a really a life-threatening situation. There were children involved, sadly, who were in this tap-tap along with them. And I just wanted to paint a clearer picture, because sometimes we think, a car wreck, okay, thank goodness the seatbelts kept them in, and it wasn't all like that.
There are pickup trucks that have a cap over the back, and then they bolt benches on either side, and you just line those benches up so people are facing each other in the bed of the pickup, right. And the back is opened. And so what happened is the driver had gone up a really steep hill, and he stalled out and started going backwards and picked up speed really quickly and smashed into a big boulder. And then it flipped over, and the one guy, Jeremy, was ejected. And when it rolled over, of course, all the people on the opposite side landed on top of the people adjacent from them. And so on top of the injuries and my brother Tim, who was the window behind him broke out on the cap of the pickup, and as it rolled down the road, all the weight of the people on top of him, plus his butt hanging out the window, was dragging across the road. He got severe road rash and broken bones, and it was a really bad accident.
Terrible. Yeah.
So anyway, everybody will be okay. But we were when I recorded last week, I was actually in the middle of trying to help with an evacuation, because Jeremy had to be medevaced out of Haiti and back to the U.S., and my brother had to go with him to keep him stable. So anyway, we were a little distracted last week, but we're back at it again this week.
We are.
Just another day in the Hinton household.
There you go. We lived through this, and we're here to be with you again.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
So we're going to talk about something very exciting today. This is off the topic of abuse. And instead of talking about us or talking about abuse, we're going to talk about you, the listeners, because we are big proponents in building community. And you use the word tribe a lot.
I do.
Building our tribe.
Yes.
And you guys are our people. And we think of you as family. And we know a lot of you by name. A lot of you message us and talk to us. And that's really cool. So we decided to start a Patreon page. And if you're not familiar with Patreon, Patreon is a way to get patrons who are people from your community, from your tribe, who voluntarily contribute. And in return, we offer some benefits for the people who contribute. So we decided to go this route instead of paid advertising for a couple of reasons. And believe me, I get a lot of notices from Spreaker, the platform that we use, and they say it's as easy as you click this button and we take care of the whole process, and then you'll have advertisements on your podcast, and then we get money that gets trickled in from those advertisers. As tempting as that is to just click a button, we didn't want to go that route. And we didn't want to go that route for a couple of reasons. And one is there's no attachment to the community that way. The other thing is when you have people paying you, the podcaster, sometimes they get a little bit finicky about what you talk about. And advertisers are allowed to come back and say, we really didn't like the content from the last podcast, and we don't want you to talk about whatever it is. We want to maintain complete freedom in what we talk about, how we talk about it, when we talk about it, because you guys matter. And a lot of what we talk about is based on feedback that we get from this community, from you guys. So anyway, we thought Patreon would be a better way to start raising revenue. And this is not so that we can become filthy rich, because believe me, how much money do we make off of this podcast?
Zero.
Right.
I'm laughing because I know that sometimes that's a person's first thought, when the issue of money comes up. It's like, oh no, we knew it. We knew it. Here we go. That's not at all our case.
In fact, it cost us money to do this podcast.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And time, which, we gladly give. This is not a woe to me whatsoever. But we want to improve. We're incredibly limited because we don't have funding to do what we love to do. So one of the things that people ask us about is, are we ever going to get to see your faces whenever you podcast? Well, as of right now, the answer is no. Because we don't have the time to do the editing or the money to buy the equipment, the cameras, the expensive microphones. There's a lot that goes into podcasting where we're in a studio and you're actually seeing us as we podcast. I don't have the time. I know you don't have the time.
I don't have the time nor the
expertise,
to do it.
Right. To be able to do the editing, and I mean, there's a lot that goes in that.
Right.
So we would have to hire somebody to do our editing and do all that stuff to make that happen. I don't know about you, but I'm not independently wealthy, and I'm guessing you aren't either.
I don't think so, Jim.
So to be able to pay somebody, we would more than happily employ somebody to do that, but we don't have the funding to do it. So Patreon is a cool way because you can set up different tiers, and people, this is not like people have to pay to listen to our podcast. We still are going to offer a free podcast, but our patrons who join us from the community end up building a stronger community, and we'll share some of those different tiers with you now. So we're pretty excited about this. I'm a little bit giddy because this is just cool. So somebody could choose to sponsor. You could be a patron for $5 a month. At the $5 per month level, you would be listed on our website as a podcast sponsor. So your name would appear on jimmyhinton.org, and we don't have this set up yet, but eventually, Finding a Healing Place, we would list that on that as an affiliate site. Okay? So your name would appear as soon as you land on jimmyhinton.org. Your name would appear as one of the sponsors.
Is that, Jimmy? Explain that.
Well, I mean, you get to be famous. No, I'm just kidding. Well, the benefit is that people within the community know who the people are within that community who are contributors.
And that's a beautiful thing, because when you see your name, all of us like to see that, but it connects us more in a stronger
personal
way.
level.
It really does. It makes it more personal to say, hey, I'm part of this community. I'm part of this tribe. And you see your name there, it signifies there, yes, I am part of this tribe. I support this.
Well, and I want to say, too, what it means for people who look for those names, because the world is a lot smaller than we think it is. And I was just showing Mom a video of these singers professionally recording a song that's in our songbooks at church. So there's this group called Praise and Harmony Singers, and they get people from different congregations all across the U.S., and, they're people who are musically gifted, musically talented, and they sing and they record these songs to help people like us learn the songs. So I'm watching this video, and I was like, oh, I know that guy. I was just in Ecuador with him.
I'm smiling because there were about 6 people in that group that Jimmy said, oh, and here's so-and-so, and here's so-and-so. There was a personal connection there.
Yeah, and it's just a really small world.
It is.
And that's pretty cool. So I'll give you an example of this too, what it would mean to have your name, and it's not just so that you can be cool. I was totally kidding. But when I went to a private Christian university, my alma mater, they had a certain sidewalk that had bricks with names on the bricks. And that was, it was in front of a new building that they had raised. They had raised all kinds of support for this brand new building. And part of that fundraising effort was, if you didn't have a lot of money and, you didn't want to just write a check, you could purchase a brick, and that brick would have your name on it.
Right.
So the cool thing is, maybe it's just because I'm a little bit of a nerd, but I would stop and I would read the names on these bricks. Mm-hmm. So as I'm walking down the sidewalk, that really caught my attention. And I was like, I'm kind of curious who helped contribute to make this building happen.
Right.
That I'm about to walk into. So I would read the names, and I always got excited when I saw names on the bricks of people I knew.
I think we're all like that. We feel a much stronger personal connection when we see a name of someone we know. We truly do. Yeah.
So that's just part of that community building. All right. So that's at the $5 per month level. And then we have what's called the Insider. That's $10 per month. And if you pledge $10 per month, you'll be listed as a podcast sponsor on the website. Okay, so your name will be listed on the website. But in addition to that, you'll receive a monthly exclusive 30-minute podcast that's only for those sponsors. So in other words, that additional podcast, we typically do, on average, we do like 4 podcasts per month, and that's just available to the public. We would be doing one additional 30-minute podcast, and that would be set to private, and only the sponsors on the $10 and up levels would be able to listen to that podcast. So we would do more specific content for those podcasts.
That would be more personalized,
right,
for those who are that part of the tribe. And
we would invite those people on, those insiders. We would invite you to give suggestions for what you want to hear on those exclusive podcasts. Yes. So those are specifically for you guys.
Right. And I get so excited about that part, because then we are truly connected in a very personal way. We are, filling some very personal needs that we would know. Right now, we are hitting a broad general group. We don't know everyone in the group personally. We could never do that. But
and there's only so much that we can do when you're doing it for the public. We're just watching a deer run in my yard right now.
I gave Jimmy a thumbs up here as I see that big deer. Wow.
Something caught my attention. I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and there's a beautiful doe right outside my window. So yeah, that we're pretty excited about that, but here's where I get really excited. Okay. So at the next level, this would be the VIP level at $15 per month, which really isn't that much. If you think about that, it's like basically a meal. I just bought a meal at Burger King, fast food, the other day. You know what I spent? Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was over $10.
Keep in mind, Jimmy.
But it was worth it. It was so good.
Keep in mind, Jimmy, your mother just 3 years ago worked in the evenings at McDonald's. Mm-hmm. And I would ring up customers that came in, a mom, a dad, and 3 children, and honestly, $40 went out on a McDonald's meal.
On one meal?
Yeah, on one meal. But like you said, it's a fun time out. It's quick, it's easy, and it's good. So it tastes really good. It's a treat. So yeah, $15 is minimal. It really is.
So at 15, that's the VIP level, and you would be, of course, listed on the website as a sponsor. You would also get the monthly exclusive 30-minute podcast, but you would also get a live Q&A chat with my mother and I. So I have this online program, which I really like. I've gotten to like this, and it keeps getting better. But it's called Appear.in, and it's a video web streaming where you get a private room. So I own a room, and you can add rooms to it or whatever. But I can create different rooms and name them different things. But you would be invited into that video podcast, or not podcast, Q&A. It's a web room. So you would be invited into that, and we would schedule a time once a month, and we would get to see your faces, and you'd get to see our faces, and we would actually be talking to each other live. And you could ask us anything that's on your mind, on your heart, and we would do a Q&A session for those VIP members.
That's totally exciting.
Yeah.
At least for
it is for us,
Jimmy
because
and
we
me. Yes,
yeah
it is totally exciting.
we were just talking about before we recorded here. One of the frustrating things is that we're so stinking strapped for time
Right.
that for us to answer an email is really challenging.
We can't get to everyone.
Because we got hundreds of them.
Right. And this would give people opportunities to, of course, we couldn't do 30 questions and answers in one session, but we could eventually work our way through. And you know, some of the questions that would be asked would be so something more than what you get in the general podcast by far. So we get totally, totally excited about this portion of the giving.
Yeah. And it's just, it's an exciting way for us to meet you guys. And, you know, when I go speak places, it's always exciting for me to meet people because I see people's Facebook profiles and, you know, people that I interact with online. I see their faces online and on Twitter. You know, I talk a lot to people on Twitter. But I get excited when I go to a place and I see a face of somebody who I've talked with a lot online, and I finally get to meet them in person.
Jimmy, I have a question. Does this mean I would have to comb my hair and wear shoes?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Come as you are.
Okay. All right. I just thought I'd ask.
No. Yeah, it's we do. We get excited to meet people.
It'd be like sitting in a room together and talking, and that would be fantastic.
Yeah. So then we have finally, this is the uppermost level. This is the VIP Plus at $25 per month. You'd be listed, of course, on the website as a podcast sponsor. You'd receive the monthly 30-minute exclusive podcast. You would be invited into the Q&A as well. But here's where it gets really cool. And this is not me being... I don't want to sound like a salesman because that's not what I'm doing. Like, I am literally excited about this. You would have the opportunity to join us as a guest on our podcast. There goes another deer.
Wow.
So pretty.
Beautiful it is, yes.
So we're, you know, as much as we love to talk because we're Italian, we also like to talk with other people. We like for there to be people just besides for the two of us. And so we're always looking for people to be guests on the podcast. And sometimes that's challenging. It's challenging because other advocates are just as busy as we are. Some survivors just have a really difficult time. And, you know, we've had people say, yeah, I'll be on your podcast. And then maybe they get cold feet or whatever, which I fully empathize with that.
Right.
But people on the VIP Plus level would get to join us on the podcast. And you're already part of the community. You're part of that inner circle. You would already know us and have spoken with us during the Q&A sessions. So, you know, it's not like you're just
meeting
jumping right in there,
right,
and
you would be
and coming on as a guest.
And like you said, you are a very involved part of the tribe at this point.
So anyway, we thought this would be a really cool, creative way to both fund the podcast, which we've been doing for over a year now with literally zero. We've not had one penny come in because we've not asked for it.
Right.
So, you know, we've done this completely at our cost for a year, but we wanted to get better both in content and on the digital side, the technical side. We would love to be able to add video. We have a studio here in town. It's actually it's a woman who I grew up with. Her dad is one of my deacons at church. Great family. And this woman, you know, we used to hang out from the time we were
You grew up together.
hip high,
Yeah, you did. You grew up
And
together.
she's a very savvy business person. And she opened up a, what do you call it?
Uptown Works, it's called.
The co-working
Yes.
space where people work together. And so you can either rent private rooms or you can rent space where you're in the common work area where you collaborate with other people. I did a tour of that. Emily gave me a tour of her business. And one of the things that she built that's not being utilized, as far as I know, is she has 2 soundproof rooms.
I know, and I'm just really chomping at the bit to use one of those rooms.
Yeah.
I really am.
Because right now, I mean, sometimes you hear my dog moaning in the background. Part of the reason is we don't have a studio.
Yeah.
To be honest, we sit in my living room. We're sitting on my living room couch right now because we can't afford to get a studio
Right.
space. We would love to have a studio with a camera, with proper equipment, and to be able to improve the quality of the podcast.
I think that's our whole point. We want to improve. And in order to improve, sadly, but, we all know anything like that takes money. And that's where part of the tribe comes in. Part of, not everyone can be a speaker, but someone can give $5 a month.
Yeah.
Not everyone can give support in another way, but everyone can possibly, set aside $15 a month and you benefit by it too. And that's the part that we love. You're not just giving a donation.
Yeah.
You are benefiting as we extend and expand. You are growing more deeply involved with this, and you will benefit more too. So we're thrilled about it. We're excited about it.
I think everybody can appreciate this. And I heard this term for the first time about 2 years ago. And the term donor fatigue. I think everybody can appreciate donor fatigue. And that's where everybody and their family members are asking for money for something. And whether it's, my kids are doing a fundraiser at school to raise money for whatever it is.
Uniforms.
Yeah.
A trip.
Or there's a GoFundMe popping up every 5 seconds for different
There are really good things out there.
Sure.
Right? Yes.
But at the end of the day, and the new fad is raising money for your birthdays.
Right.
So it's my birthday. I'm doing a fundraiser. To be honest, I hate to say this, but I've not given to those because my wife and I, we support 2 different missionary families. We're putting somebody else through school. We give weekly to church. We're very liberal in our giving. And whenever these fundraisers come up, it's nothing to find 10 of them a day on my Facebook feed, 10 new ones a day. And those are just with people who I'm friends with. So we wanted to do something where instead of just asking you for money, we give you something in return and we help build the community and we get to know you better and you get to know us better. And we just thought this was a really creative way.
And for those of you who know Jimmy and myself personally, you know that it's very awkward for us to even mention money. We went into this podcast saying the very same thing. But it makes us feel very happy to know that we would be giving something, a lot, in fact, in return for your support.
Yeah. And we just want to keep building this community and getting to know people better, and we're all about that.
Well, Jimmy, how do people do this? And then we'll close this session out.
Okay, so easiest way. Go to jimmyhinton.org, and when you land on that front homepage, just scroll down all the way to the bottom, and you'll see a thing that says Become a Patron. And that's it. You click on the link, and you're there. So it's a little orange button. It says, help our podcast reach the world. Become a patron. Click on that link, and it opens up a new page, and it's 100% self-explanatory.
And I'd encourage everybody that as you've listened to this, pray over it, search your heart, ask yourself what you would like to see more of, and then, make your selection. And in the meantime, our regular podcast, will continue next week. We'll continue putting that out for whomever tunes in.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for listening to this podcast, and tell the world. We'll see you next week. Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast. If you found it helpful, please follow on Spreaker, subscribe on Google Play Music, Apple Podcasts, or Stitcher. Share with your friends and tell the world. Join us in speaking out on sex abuse so we can change the tides and prevent abuse.